50 miles west of Guam, Vice Admiral Ozawa stands on the bridge of the carrier Taiho and watches the horizon through his binoculars. Behind him lies the mobile fleet, Japan's last carrier strike force, 9 carriers, 5 battleships, the pride of the Imperial Navy. Ahead, somewhere beyond that line where sky meets water, are the Americans. Ozawa has studied the intelligence reports. Task Force 58, 15 carriers, maybe 16. The numbers seem impossible, but his staff assures him they are accurate. 15 American carriers against his 9. The math is brutal, but Ozawa has a plan. Japanese aircraft have longer range. His A-6M0s can fly 1,900 kilometers. The American F-6F Hellcats manage only 1,520. This means Ozawa can strike from 300 miles out, a distance from which American planes cannot reach his ships. It is a perfect plan, he believes. Attack from beyond the enemy's reach, cripple their carriers, withdraw before they can respond. But there is something Ozawa does not know, cannot know, because Japanese intelligence has failed to grasp the fundamental transformation of American naval aviation. It is not just about the number of carriers or the range of aircraft. It is about something far more devastating, an industrial system for repairing, rearming, and relaunching aircraft so quickly that a single carrier can generate sortie rates the Japanese consider physically impossible. If you're enjoying this deep dive into the story, hit the subscribe button and let us know in the comments from where in the world you are watching from today. The Japanese understanding of carrier operations is rooted in their own experience. On a Japanese carrier, when an aircraft returns from a mission, it must be struck below, to the hangar deck, immediately. And there is no crash barrier on Japanese flight decks, so the entire deck must be cleared for each landing aircraft. Once below, the plane is refueled and rearmed in the enclosed hangar, a process that takes time. The hangar crew works methodically, carefully. Fuel lines are connected, ammunition is loaded, bombs are mounted. The process cannot be rushed without risking catastrophic explosions in the confined space. Japanese carriers typically carry spare aircraft, about 50% more than their operational complement, because they assume heavy maintenance and major repairs can only be done at home ports. Their ground crews are not trained for complex field repairs. A damaged aircraft with serious structural problems or engine trouble is often simply pushed over the side. Better to make room for operational planes than waste precious hangar space on machines that might take days to fix. This is the Japanese reality. And because it is their reality, they assume it is everyone's reality. When intelligence officers estimate American carrier capabilities, they calculate based on Japanese operational tempo. One carrier with 90 aircraft might launch, at best, 2 major strikes per day, maybe 3 if conditions are perfect and losses are light. The turnaround time, the period between recovering aircraft and launching them again, is measured in hours. Rear Admiral Sueo Obayashi, commanding Carrier Division 3 aboard the light carrier Chitos, shares a meal with his flight operations officer on the morning of June 19th. They discuss the coming battle. The operations officer spreads a chart on the table. Admiral, even if the Americans have 15 carriers, they cannot maintain continuous operations. They face the same limitations we do. Aircraft must be serviced. Pilots must rest. By late afternoon, their sortie rate will drop significantly. Obayashi nods. It is logical. It is based on experience. It is also completely wrong, because the Americans do not refuel and rearm in the hangar. They do it on the flight deck, in the open air, with the aircraft engines still warm. They use crash barriers that allow planes to land even while other aircraft are being serviced forward. They have trained their deck crews to work with the precision and speed of a factory assembly line. And most importantly, they have created a logistics system that can repair battle damage in hours, not days. But none of this is visible to Ozawa or Obayashi or any of the Japanese commanders. All they see is the number, 15 carriers. Large number, yes, but manageable. If Japanese aircraft can strike first from maximum range, that is the plan. Newport News, Virginia, March 1st, 1943. Chief Aviation Machinist's mate, Robert Hendricks, stands on the flight deck of the USS Essex CV-9, the first of her class to enter service. Around him, dozens of aircraft are parked in precise rows. F-6F Hellcats, SB-2, Sea Helldivers, TBF Avengers. The morning sun glints off their aluminum skin. Hendricks has been in naval aviation for 12 years. He served on the Lexington before she was sunk at Coral Sea. He knows carriers, but this ship, this Essex, feels different. Larger, yes. The flight deck stretches 262 meters from bow to stern. But it is not just size. It is design, purpose, efficiency. He walks toward the island superstructure and notices the deck edge elevator positioned on the starboard side rather than center line. The chief engineer, Lieutenant Commander William Phillips, joins him. You see it, old chief? The elevator placement, sir. That's part of it. But look at the whole deck. Notice anything. Hendricks scans the expanse. Then he sees it. The deck's designed for continuous operations. Exactly. We can land aircraft aft while launching forward. The crash barrier system allows us to cycle planes faster than any carrier in the world. And see those fuel lines? Phillips points to deck fittings that Hendricks had noticed but not fully appreciated. We refuel on deck. Rearm on deck. We don't waste time cycling aircraft through the hangar unless they need actual maintenance. How fast can we turn around a strike, sir? Under optimal conditions, 90 minutes from recovery to relaunch, maybe 75 if the crews are sharp and there's no battle damage. Hendricks does the math in his head. 90 minutes. The old Lexington needed 3 hours minimum, often 4. That's not possible, sir. The fuel connections alone. We've redesigned everything. Quick disconnect fuel lines, preloaded bomb carts. The ordnance crews trained to arm an entire strike group in under 30 minutes. The whole system is built for speed. What about repairs? Phillips smiles. That's where it gets interesting. Come with me. They descend into the hangar deck. Here the space is open, well lit, organized into clear work zones. Phillips gestures to several areas partitioned by function. Engine repair, airframe work, electrical systems, hydraulics. Each section has specialized tools and trained personnel. We can rebuild an engine in 8 hours, replace a damaged wing in 12. And if we can't fix it quickly, we cannibalize parts from our spares. The Japanese carry spare aircraft, Hendricks says. We carry spare parts, more flexible. An entire spare aircraft takes up hangar space. Individual components. We can store thousands of them in lockers throughout the ship. And here's the key thing, Chief. When we get to the Pacific, we won't be alone. The Navy's creating a logistics network unlike anything the world has ever seen. Admiral Chester Nimitz, Commander-in-Chief Pacific Fleet, sits in his Pearl Harbor headquarters 3 months later, in June 1943, reviewing a report from Captain Arleigh Burke, his logistics planner. The report outlines Service Squadron 10, a concept revolutionary in its scope. Explain it to me simply, Nimitz says. Burke spreads a chart across the desk. Admiral, traditional naval operations require carriers to return to port for resupply, refueling and repairs. That means weeks of transit time, weeks when those carriers aren't fighting. Service Squadron 10 changes that. We're creating a floating base. How? Tankers that can refuel ships at sea, ammunition ships that transfer bombs and bullets without entering port, repair ships equipped with machine shops, welding equipment, spare parts, hospital ships, destroyer tenders, everything a carrier task force needs, mobile, able to meet them anywhere in the Pacific. Nimitz leans back. The Japanese have nothing like this? No, sir. Their carriers must return to Japan for major repairs. That's 6,000 miles round trip from the forward areas. Our carriers will get repaired on site, often within sight of the combat zone. And aircraft. That's where it gets impressive, sir. We're establishing a system where damaged aircraft can be repaired faster than the Japanese can replace lost ones. Each Essex-class carrier has about 90 aircraft, but through the supply chain, we can deliver replacement planes to forward areas within days. We're building escort carriers specifically to ferry aircraft across the Pacific, and we're training maintenance crews to perform repairs that the Japanese consider impossible at sea. Nimitz nods slowly. So we're not just building more carriers, we're building a system. Exactly, sir. The Japanese build beautiful ships, individual masterpieces. We're building an industrial process, and industrial processes scale. June 19th, 1944, returns to our story. At 1000 hours, radar operators aboard the USS Yorktown CV-10 detect a large formation of aircraft 150 miles to the west. The report flashes to Admiral Mark Mitcher aboard the Lexington CV-16. Launch all fighters. Within 12 minutes, 220 F-6F Hellcats are airborne, climbing to intercept altitude. This is possible because Task Force 58 has been maintaining a combat air patrol continuously, with fresh fighters launching every 2 hours to replace those running low on fuel. The Japanese, operating from the limit of their range, have no such luxury. The first wave of Japanese aircraft, 69 planes, meets the Hellcat screen at 10:36. The engagement is brief and brutal. American pilots, vectored to the target by radar-equipped fighter directors, have altitude advantage, position advantage, and numerical advantage. In 15 minutes, 42 Japanese aircraft are destroyed. 17 make it through to attack the American carriers. They drop bombs and torpedoes. Every weapon misses or fails to penetrate armor. Japanese losses. For the first wave, 42 aircraft. At 1100 hours, the second wave appears. 130 planes. Again, Hellcats intercept. Again, the mathematics of air combat favor the Americans. The Japanese lose 97 aircraft. The few survivors straggle back toward their carriers with dire reports. The Americans have more fighters than intelligence suggested. Many more, and they are everywhere. What the Japanese pilots do not realize, cannot understand, is that they are not facing a static defense. They are facing an industrial system in action. As Hellcats land aboard the carriers, deck crews swarm them. Fuel trucks roll up, ammunition carts appear, armorers reload machine guns. Within minutes, the same aircraft that just landed is being respotted for launch. 45 minutes later, it is airborne again. Lieutenant Robert Duncan lands aboard the Essex at 11:23 after shooting down 2 Japanese aircraft. His Hellcat has taken several hits from return fire. One round has punctured a fuel tank. Another has damaged the starboard aileron. The landing signals officer waves him to a halt. Deck crews surround the aircraft. Chief Hendricks arrives, examines the damage. Tank self-sealing, but we should check it. Aileron linkage looks bent. Can you fly? She's pulling right, but manageable. Give us 30 minutes. Duncan climbs down, walks to the ready room for debriefing. Behind him, Hendricks's crew descends on the Hellcat like surgeons on a patient. One technician patches the fuel tank with sealant. 2 others remove the damaged aileron panel, replace it with a spare from stores. The hydraulic lines are checked. The control surfaces tested. At 11:52, 29 minutes after landing, Duncan's Hellcat is pushed back to the flight deck, refueled, rearmed, ready for another sortie. This scene repeats across all 15 carriers of Task Force 58, and the Japanese, watching their strike waves disappear into a sky full of American fighters, begin to understand that something has changed. This is not the carrier warfare they trained for. This is something new. Admiral Ozawa, aboard what remains of his flagship, a cruiser now because Taiho has been sunk by a submarine, stares at the casualty reports. 330 aircraft lost in one day. 330. Against American losses of 29, the ratio is 11-1, and the Americans still have all 15 carriers operational. He does not yet know the full truth. He does not know that the American carriers have launched and recovered aircraft continuously for 14 hours. He does not know that some individual American aircraft have flown 3 sorties in a single day. He does not know about the repair teams working through the night to fix battle damage, about the supply ships waiting at Eniwetok with replacement aircraft, about the industrial machine that has turned carrier aviation into a form of warfare the Japanese cannot match. He knows only this: the Americans can generate air power faster than Japan can replace it, and that realization, on the evening of June 19th, 1944, marks the true end of Japanese carrier aviation as an effective fighting force. But we are getting ahead of ourselves. To understand how the Americans achieved this, we must go back to the beginning, back to the moment when someone looked at the traditional way of operating aircraft carriers and said, what if we did everything different? Ulithi Atoll, Caroline Islands, November 3rd, 1944. The largest anchorage in the world stretches before Captain James Russell as he stands on the deck of the repair ship USS Ajax, AR-6. Around him, in a lagoon 50 miles in circumference, lie more than 600 ships, 12 Essex-class carriers, 4 Independence-class light carriers, 7 battleships, dozens of cruisers and destroyers, and scattered among them, the unglamorous vessels that make everything possible. Tankers, ammunition ships, repair vessels, hospital ships, floating dry docks. Russell watches as the carrier Intrepid, CV-11, maneuvers alongside Ajax. The carrier has taken kamikaze damage off the Philippines 3 days earlier. A Japanese aircraft crashed through her flight deck, killing 60 crew members and destroying several parked planes. The ship made temporary repairs at sea and has now arrived at Ulithi for proper work. How long until she's operational again? Asks Commander David Chen, Ajax's chief engineer. Russell examines the damage report. Flight deck needs 18 feet of new plating. We'll need to cut out the damaged section, weld in new steel, resurface it, frame damage underneath, some electrical conduits severed. Time estimate. If you're enjoying this deep dive into the story, hit the subscribe button and let us know in the comments from where in the world you are watching from today. 48 hours if we work around the clock, maybe 60 if we hit complications. Chen blinks. 2 days. Captain, that's a 100-ton hole in an armored flight deck. I'm aware, but we have the materials, the tools, and 300 trained welders and metal workers on this ship alone, plus Intrepid's own repair crews. The Navy designed these carriers to be fixable, and they designed ships like Ajax to fix them. This is the secret the Japanese never grasped. American carriers were built not just to operate aircraft, but to survive damage and return to action quickly. Every system had redundancy. Damage control was paramount, and, most importantly, the Navy had created an entire fleet of auxiliary vessels whose sole purpose was keeping the fighting ships fighting. Let us examine the numbers. Service Squadron 10, established in late 1943, consists at its peak of 34 specialized ships, among them 6 fleet oilers capable of refueling an entire task group at sea, 4 ammunition ships, each carrying 1,500 tons of bombs, torpedoes, and shells, 3 repair ships equipped with machine shops, foundries, and electronic repair facilities, 2 hospital ships with full surgical capabilities, and 18 support vessels handling everything from spare parts to food supplies. The Japanese have nothing comparable. When a Japanese carrier needs fuel, it must return to a fleet anchorage. When it needs ammunition, same story. When it needs repairs beyond what the ship's own crew can manage, it must steam 6,000 miles back to Yokosuka or Kure. Each round trip takes a month, often more. During that month, the carrier is not fighting, it is transiting. It is vulnerable to submarines. It is, for all practical purposes, removed from the war. The Americans have eliminated transit time. An Essex-class carrier can operate continuously for 3 to 4 months without returning to Pearl Harbor. It refuels at sea every 3 to 4 days. It receives ammunition every week. It gets repairs as needed right in the combat zone. The operational tempo this enables is staggering. Commander Thomas Blackburn, Air Group Commander aboard USS Bunker Hill, CV-17, briefs his pilots on the morning of November 5th, 1944. They are preparing for strikes against Manila in support of the Philippines invasion. Blackburn has flown combat missions in the Atlantic and Mediterranean before transferring to the Pacific. He knows the difference between theory and practice. Gentlemen, we're going to fly 3 strikes today. First launch at 0600. Target, Nichols Field, Japanese fighter base south of Manila. Second strike at 1100. Target, shipping in Manila Bay. Third strike at 1530. Close air support for our troops landing at Leyte. Each strike will have fighter escort, dive bombers, and torpedo bombers. You will land, refuel, rearm, and launch again. Turnaround time is 90 minutes. A young ensign, fresh from Pensacola training, raises his hand. Sir, 90 minutes seems ambitious. It's standard. The deck crews have it down to a science. Your job is to fly and fight. Their job is to turn this ship into a factory that processes aircraft. They're very good at it. The ensign still looks skeptical. Blackburn understands. Until you see it in action, it seems impossible. Let me put it this way. In the Solomons campaign, back in 42 and 43, a carrier might launch 60 sorties in a good day. Today, Bunker Hill will launch 210 sorties. Our sister ships in the task force will do the same. By sunset, Task Force 38 will have put over 2,500 sorties into the air. That's the equivalent of what the entire Pacific Fleet could manage in a week back in 1942. The mathematics of this are devastating to the enemy. The Japanese, in the entire Philippines campaign, will manage approximately 400 sorties per day across all their air bases. Task Force 38 alone generates 6 times that number, and the American aircraft return to ships that can fix damage, replace parts, and send them out again. At 0615, the first wave launches from Bunker Hill, 36 fighters, 18 dive bombers, 9 torpedo bombers. They strike Nichols Field, destroy 19 Japanese aircraft on the ground, crater the runway. By 0745, they are returning. The landing begins at 0800. Petty Officer First Class Michael Torres watches from his position on the flight deck. Torres is an aviation ordnance man, part of the team that arms and services the aircraft. He has been doing this job for 18 months, since Bunker Hill entered service. He knows every step of the process. By heart, the first Hellcat touches down at 0802. The arresting wire catches. The plane rolls to a stop. The barrier drops. A yellow-shirted plane handler signals the pilot to taxi forward. The Hellcat moves to the forward part of the deck, where it will be refueled and rearmed, while other planes land behind it. Torres and his team approach the aircraft as soon as it parks. They have 8 minutes to complete their work before this plane must be moved to make room for the next cycle. The pilot cuts the engine. Torres opens the ammunition access panels. Empty brass casings from the .650 caliber. Machine guns are still hot to the touch. His team removes the empty ammunition cans, installs fresh ones. Each gun receives 400 rounds. Total 2,400 rounds of .50 caliber ammunition. While Torres handles the guns, another team connects the fuel line. The Hellcat's tanks are half empty. They need approximately 300 gallons. The fuel truck's pump can deliver 50 gallons per minute, 6 minutes for fuel. Meanwhile, a third team inspects the aircraft for damage. They find a single bullet hole in the port wing. Superficial. No structural damage. No need for repairs. 7 minutes and 30 seconds after landing, the Hellcat is fully serviced. It is pushed to the rear of the deck, ready for the next launch. Behind it, 5 more fighters have landed and been serviced in the same efficient manner. The dive bombers come next. They require 500-pound bombs, in addition to fuel and ammunition. Torres's team has these bombs preloaded on specialized carts, 2 bombs per aircraft. The loading process takes 12 minutes per plane. By 0930, all 63 aircraft from the first strike have been recovered, serviced, and respotted for the next launch. Some have minor damage, requiring quick repairs. A cracked canopy here, a damaged radio antenna there. But nothing that keeps them from the next mission. The few aircraft with serious damage are struck below to the hangar for extended maintenance. Replacement aircraft from the reserve are brought up to fill the gaps. If you find this story engaging, please take a moment to subscribe and enable notifications. It helps us continue producing in-depth content like this at 1100 hours The second strike launches, same aircraft that flew the first mission, now with fresh fuel, fresh ammunition, fresh ordnance. The pilots have had 2 hours to rest, debrief, eat a meal, plan the next mission. The aircraft themselves have had 90 minutes of service time. This cycle will repeat 3 times today and tomorrow and the day after, for weeks. The Japanese cannot comprehend this tempo. Their intelligence officers, analyzing American carrier operations, keep revising their estimates upward. Initially, they believed an American carrier with 90 aircraft could generate perhaps 150 sorties per day. Then they revised to 200, then 250. The true number, sustained over multiple days, is closer to 280. Admiral Somu Toyoda, Commander-in-Chief of the Combined Fleet, reads the intelligence reports in his Tokyo headquarters on November 15, 1944. The numbers strain credibility. This claims the Americans flew 2,600 sorties in a single day during the Leyte operation. That's impossible. His intelligence chief, Captain Miyotaro, spreads reconnaissance photographs on the desk. These were taken by a scout plane that survived a mission over the American fleet 3 days ago. Count the carriers, Admiral. 15 large carriers, 4 light carriers. If each large carrier generates 200 sorties and each light carrier generates 100, the mathematics support the estimate. But how? How do they service that many aircraft? How do they train that many pilots? How do they produce that many bombs? We believe the answer lies in their industrial capacity and their supply system. The Americans are not operating these carriers as individual ships. They are operating them as an integrated system supported by a logistics fleet we initially underestimated. Toyoda stares at the photographs. If this is accurate, we cannot match their sortie rate, even if we had 19 carriers, which we do not. No, Admiral. We lost that capability at the Philippine Sea in June, and we lost the skilled maintenance crews at Midway 2 years before that. Even if we had the carriers and the aircraft, we no longer have the trained personnel to achieve such operational tempo. This is the invisible wound, the one that does not appear in battle reports or casualty lists. At Midway, in June 1942, Japan lost 4 fleet carriers. Everyone knows this. But what often goes unreported is that approximately 2,600 highly skilled maintenance personnel went down with those ships: flight deck crews, engine mechanics, avionics specialists, hydraulics technicians. These men represented years of training and experience. They were the institutional knowledge that made Japanese carrier operations possible, and they cannot be replaced quickly. Training an aircraft mechanic capable of complex repairs takes months, even years. Training an entire carrier's complement of such mechanics requires a functioning training infrastructure, spare aircraft for instruction, time. Japan, in 1942 and 43, has none of these in abundance. The men who could train the next generation are dead at the bottom of the Pacific. The aircraft that could be used for training are needed at the front. The time required for proper training does not exist because new carriers need crews now. So Japan fills its carrier maintenance billets with partially trained personnel, men who can perform routine service but not complex repairs, men who know procedures but not principles, men who, when faced with unusual damage or equipment failure, must declare the aircraft inoperable and wait for depot-level maintenance that may never come. The Americans, by contrast, have created an industrial training system. At Naval Air Station Jacksonville, at NAS Corpus Christi, at NAS Pensacola, and at a dozen other facilities, thousands of maintenance technicians graduate every month. They train on actual aircraft, not mock-ups. They practice actual repairs under time pressure. They learn troubleshooting, improvisation, workarounds. And they do this using a standardized curriculum, standardized tools, standardized procedures, so that a mechanic trained in Jacksonville can arrive on a carrier trained at Newport News and immediately function as part of the team. Aviation machinist's mate, second class, Henry Wilson, completes his training at NAS Jacksonville in August 1944. He is 21 years old, from Oklahoma. Enlisted in the Navy 2 years earlier, his training has included 4 months of basic mechanical theory, 3 months of aircraft engine specifics, 2 months of carrier operations procedures, and 1 month of hands-on maintenance under simulated combat conditions. Total training time, 10 months. He arrives aboard USS Randolph, CV-15 in September. Within a week, Wilson is part of the engine repair team. His first major job comes on September 23rd when a Hellcat returns from a strike against Marcus Island with a sick engine. The pilot reports rough running, loss of power, excessive oil consumption. Wilson and his team pull the plane to the hangar deck and begin diagnosis. The problem is a cracked cylinder head on a Japanese carrier. This would likely mean the aircraft is out of service until it can return to Japan for depot maintenance. The repair requires removing the cylinder, replacing it with a new one, and reassembling the engine. On Randolph, Wilson's team has spare cylinders in stock. They have the tools, they have the technical manuals, they have the training. They complete the repair in 11 hours. The Hellcat flies its next mission. The following morning, Wilson's team has returned a combat aircraft to service in less than 24 hours, a repair the Japanese consider impossible at sea. And across Task Force 38, similar repairs happen daily. Bent propeller blades straightened and balanced, damaged hydraulic lines replaced, electrical systems rewired, wings replaced entirely using spares stored aboard the carrier. The Essex-class carriers were designed for this. Each ship has a well-equipped machine shop, an electrical repair shop, an electronics lab, a carpentry shop, a sail loft for fabric work, a blacksmith forge, a welding station. The ships carry tons of spare parts, engines, propellers, wheels, tires, radios, instruments, guns, hydraulic pumps, fuel pumps, electrical generators, everything needed to repair an air group at sea for months. And if a carrier runs low on a particular part, the supply ships can deliver more. The ammunition ships carry not just bombs, but spare parts. The repair ships carry not just tools, but entire workshops. And the escort carriers, dozens of them, ferry replacement aircraft from the United States to forward areas continuously. An Essex-class carrier that loses 5 aircraft in combat can receive 5 replacements within a week, sometimes sooner. Japan has no equivalent system. When a Japanese carrier loses aircraft, it must wait until it returns to Japan to receive replacements. When it runs out of a critical spare part, the aircraft needing that part become inoperable until the carrier returns to port. When maintenance personnel are killed or wounded, they are not replaced until the next port call. Everything depends on the home islands. Everything requires transit back and forth across 6,000 miles of submarine-infested ocean. The strategic implications are profound. An American carrier damaged on November 1st can be repaired and back in action by November 3rd. A Japanese carrier damaged on November 1st will not return to combat until January at the earliest, possibly later. An American carrier that expends its ammunition on November 1st receives fresh ordnance on November 2nd. A Japanese carrier must steam back to Kura, a 2-week journey each way. The Americans can sustain operations indefinitely, the Japanese cannot, and this, more than any single battle or tactical innovation, determines the outcome of the carrier war in the Pacific. It is not about courage or skill or individual excellence. It is about industrial capacity translated into operational capability. It is about logistics as strategy. It is about building a system that can generate, maintain, and repair air power faster than the enemy can destroy it. Lieutenant Commander James Ramage, a dive bomber pilot aboard USS Enterprise, CV-6, writes in his diary on November 27, 1944, after a long day of strikes against Japanese positions in the Philippines. "We flew 4 missions today, 4. In the old days, back in 42, 1 mission per day was considered good work. 2 was exceptional. 4 was unheard of. Now it's routine. The deck crews make it look easy, but I know it's not. Between every launch, they work miracles. They refuel planes in 12 minutes. They load bombs in 15. They fix damage that would have grounded a plane for days. We're not flying more because we're better pilots. We're flying more because the whole system is better. The ship, the crews, the logistics, everything. The Japanese are good flyers, but they're fighting the old way. We've invented a new way. Ramage is correct. The Pacific Carrier War is not being won by superior tactics or better technology. The Hellcat is better than the Zero, yes, but not overwhelmingly so. American pilots are well trained, but so were the Japanese in 1941 and early 1942. The difference is systemic. The Americans have built an industrial machine that can sustain operations at a tempo impossible for the enemy to match, and the machine is still accelerating. In December 1944, 2 new Essex-class carriers, Bonhomme, Richard, and Ticonderoga, joined the fleet. In January 1945, 2 more arrive. Each brings 90 aircraft and 3,000 trained personnel. Each brings another 280 sorties per day of striking power. Each brings another target that the Japanese must somehow disable or destroy, while defending against the existing carriers still hammering away. The mathematics become overwhelming. By March 1945, Task Force 58 has 17 fleet carriers, 5 light carriers, 18 battleships, 32 cruisers, and more than 100 destroyers. The striking power of this force exceeds the combined naval strength of Germany, Italy, and Japan at the start of the war, and it operates as a single, coordinated unit capable of launching 3,000 sorties in a day, capable of maintaining a combat air patrol of 200 fighters continuously, capable of steaming 3,000 miles without entering port. Japan has nothing to counter this. By March 1945, the combined fleet has effectively ceased to exist as a combat force. The super battleship Yamato, the last major surface combatant, will sortie in April on a one-way suicide mission and be sunk by carrier aircraft before reaching Okinawa. Japanese naval aviation consists of kamikazes, desperate young men in obsolete aircraft attempting to crash into American ships. It is effective in the same way that a suicide bomber is effective. It can cause casualties, but it is not a sustainable military strategy. It is the tactic of a force that has lost the conventional fight. And at the heart of Japan's defeat lies a simple truth they never fully grasped. The Americans did not just build more carriers. They built a system for operating carriers at a tempo and scale impossible for anyone else to match. They built floating factories that could repair fighters in hours. They built supply chains that could deliver ammunition across 5,000 miles of ocean in days. They built training programs that could graduate 5,000 mechanics in the time Japan graduated 500. They built everything needed to turn industrial capacity into military power. The Essex-class carriers were the most visible part of this system, but only a part. Behind each carrier stood repair ships, tankers, ammunition ships, transport ships, hospital ships. Behind those stood the shipyards, building the vessels, the factories producing the aircraft, the training schools graduating the personnel. Behind those stood the farms feeding the workers, the mines producing the raw materials, the oil fields supplying the fuel. The entire industrial capacity of the United States mobilized and focused on a single objective: win the Pacific. It was not elegant, it was not always efficient, but it was overwhelming. And in the end, overwhelming proved sufficient. If you're enjoying this deep dive into the story, hit the subscribe button and let us know in the comments from where in the world you are watching from today.